Paul Orndorff didn't hold back. He said it himself. There were wrestlers he flat out hated. He was weak. That's what Orndorff thought about some of the biggest names in wrestling. These weren't just guys he disagreed with. These were men who made his blood boil. Men who represented everything he despised about the business. Orndorff had a short temper. He had a sharp tongue. And above all else, he was obsessed with toughness. If you couldn't hack it, if you took shortcuts, if you got by on politics instead of sweat, Mr. Wonderful had no respect for you, and he didn't hide it. In his brutal 2002 shoot interview, Orndorff named names. He called out legends. He exposed what really happened behind the curtain. This video reveals the truth behind the 5 men Orndorff couldn't stand and what his harsh words really meant about wrestling's broken system. Before we understand who Orndorff hated, we need to understand where his hatred came from. Paul Orndorff didn't just wake up angry. His rage was forged in fire. It was built in one of the most brutal training environments in wrestling history. The place was called the Dungeon. It was run by promoter Eddie Graham and a group of legitimate submission fighters in Tampa, Florida. The heat was unbearable. The humidity was suffocating. And the workouts were designed to break you. Trainees like Orndorff were forced to do 500 Hindu squats, then 500 push-ups. Then when their bodies were completely exhausted, they had to wrestle 10-minute bouts against submission experts like Hiro Matsuda. These weren't practice matches, they were real fights. Matsuda was a hooker, a wrestler who could legitimately hurt you with holds and submissions. Orndorff didn't have a college wrestling background like some of his peers. He had to rely on pure brute strength just to survive. Every day in that dungeon taught him one thing. Toughness was everything. If you couldn't take the pain, you didn't belong. If you weren't willing to suffer, you were worthless. This brutal standard became Orndorff's entire worldview. Years later, when he saw wrestlers getting pushed because of politics, he felt betrayed. When he saw stars being protected by management, he felt disgusted. His bitterness wasn't random. It came from watching lesser men get rewards he believed they hadn't earned. The dungeon created Mr. Wonderful, but it also created a man who would never forgive weakness. Hulk Hogan was the center of everything Orndorff hated about wrestling. Hogan was the golden boy. He was Vince McMahon's meal ticket. And to Orndorff, that was the problem. Orndorff believed he deserved a WWF championship run. He thought he had earned it. Their 1986 feud drew massive crowds. Wrestling historians say Orndorff gave Hogan some of the best matches of his entire career. The chemistry was undeniable. The heat was real. But Orndorff never got the belt. He was told the company was afraid. They feared he would become real competition for Hogan. They worried his popularity might threaten their golden goose. So they protected Hogan. They kept the title on him no matter what. Orndorff saw this as robbery. He argued that giving him the belt for just 4 or 5 months would have elevated Hogan even more. The fans would have believed anyone could win. The drama would have been real. But corporate politics killed that dream. Management chose the safe path. They picked their favorite and stuck with him. To Orndorff, Hogan wasn't a workhorse. He was a corporate puppet. He was the symbol of everything wrong with wrestling's new system. Orndorff had been trained to believe merit mattered. But in Vince McMahon's world, loyalty and marketing mattered more. Hogan became the face of that broken promise. Every time Orndorff looked at him, he saw his stolen future. The bitterness ran deep. The resentment never faded. Orndorff didn't hate Hogan the person. He hated what Hogan represented, a system that rewarded politics over performance. Andre the Giant was a legend. Everyone knew that. But by the mid-'80s, Andre's body was falling apart. He suffered from a condition called acromegaly. It caused constant pain. It made movement difficult, and it made wrestling him a nightmare. Orndorff was forced to work with Andre during this decline. He had to carry the Giant through matches. He had to protect him from injury. He had to make sure Andre didn't get hurt while also trying to have a decent match. For a man trained in the dungeon, this was torture. Orndorff's entire style was built on intensity and precision, but with Andre, he had to throw that out. He couldn't move fast. He couldn't execute complex sequences. He had to constantly adjust his offense just to keep Andre safe. The matches felt slow. They felt restricted. They felt wrong. Orndorff wasn't angry at Andre personally. He was disgusted by the situation. He was resentful of being held back by someone's physical weakness. In Orndorff's world, weakness was unforgivable. If you couldn't perform, you shouldn't be in the ring. But Andre was a legend. He was protected. He was given opportunities despite his limitations. To Orndorff, this was the soft side of wrestling. It was everything opposite to the brutal standards he believed in. Andre represented spectacle over substance. He was a name that sold tickets but couldn't deliver the work, and Orndorff had to pay the price. Every match with Andre reminded him that wrestling had become a business of illusions, not a sport of legitimate toughness. Junkyard Dog had one thing going for him. The fans loved him. JYD could walk to the ring and the crowd would explode. He had charisma, he had energy, he had a connection with the audience that few could match. But to Paul Orndorff, none of that mattered, because JYD didn't have discipline. Orndorff worked with Junkyard Dog back in Mid-South Wrestling, a territory known for its brutal, physical style under promoter Bill Watts. Orndorff expected every match to be a war. He expected his opponents to bring intensity every single night, but JYD didn't work that way. He relied on crowd reactions, he coasted on his personality, his matches were inconsistent. Sometimes he was engaged, sometimes he wasn't. For a perfectionist like Orndorff, this was infuriating. JYD was proof that you could succeed in wrestling without putting in the hard work. You could smile your way to the top. You could win matches on charisma alone, but you would never earn respect from the real workers. Orndorff despised wrestlers like this. He saw them as frauds. They took shortcuts. They got by on popularity instead of sweat. To Orndorff, JYD was proof that smiles could win matches, but never respect. The contempt was obvious. Orndorff mocked the casual approach. He hated the idea that wrestling had become entertainment instead of combat. JYD represented everything that made Orndorff bitter about the business. A system that rewarded the wrong things. A world where effort didn't matter as much as likability. Tito Santana was different. He was the only wrestler on this list that Orndorff actually respected. Santana was a good worker. He was disciplined. He was reliable. But Orndorff still didn't like wrestling him. The reason was simple. Their matches were brutal. Santana later described how intense Paul Orndorff was to wrestle. He said their bouts were wars. They were stiff. They were painful. They left both men exhausted and sore. Orndorff even admitted that he enjoyed working with Santana. He ranked some of their matches among the top 5 of his career, but that didn't mean he liked the experience. For Orndorff, wrestling Tito Santana meant paying a physical cost. Every match demanded maximum effort. Every move had to be perfect. Every exchange was real. There was no coasting. There was no protection. Just 2 men beating the hell out of each other to create something great. This is the irony of Orndorff's list. The man he respected most was also the man who hurt him most. In wrestling terms, calling someone hard to wrestle is the highest compliment. It means they force you to be at your best, but it also means you suffer for it. For Orndorff, whose body was breaking down from years of punishment, that suffering added up. Santana represented the painful truth of what it meant to be great. You couldn't fake it. You couldn't take shortcuts. You had to endure, and sometimes the cost of excellence was simply too high. Vader wasn't on Orndorff's list of wrestlers he didn't like to work with. He was on a different list, the list of men who disrespected him, and Orndorff didn't tolerate disrespect. The story is legendary in wrestling circles. Vader, a massive powerhouse known for being stiff and intimidating, apparently sucker-punched Orndorff. Maybe it was over a disagreement. Maybe it was locker room politics. The reason doesn't matter. What matters is what happened next. Orndorff beat Vader up, and he did it while wearing flip-flops. Think about that. Flip-flops. Not wrestling boots, not sneakers. Flip-flops. Orndorff hit Vader so hard and so many times that he nearly broke his own toe. He left Vader's lips swollen like a watermelon. He made it clear that size didn't matter. Respect did. Orndorff later said he never cared for Vader. He called him a jerk. He said Vader was a bully in the ring and in the locker room. But Orndorff wasn't afraid. He didn't talk about respect. He enforced it. This fight summed up everything about Paul Orndorff's philosophy. You could be bigger. You could be stronger. You could be more famous. But if you crossed the line, Mr. Wonderful would make you pay. The flip-flop story became part of his legend. It proved he lived by the code he preached. No one disrespects Mr. Wonderful. Not in the ring, not in the locker room, not ever. Orndorff's anger came at a cost. His body broke down from years of living the hard way. The brutal matches, the constant physical punishment, the refusal to ever take it easy, all of it added up. By the end of his career, Orndorff's body was destroyed. He suffered severe injuries. He endured constant pain. The same toughness that made him great also made him broken. But even in his bitterness, Orndorff showed he cared. He pushed for a wrestlers' union. He wanted insurance and retirement benefits for performers. He saw too many of his peers crippled from wrestling. He knew the business chewed people up and spit them out. He wanted fairness. He wanted the system to change. His anger wasn't just about himself. It was about wanting wrestling to be more honest, more real, more fair. But that fight isolated him. Orndorff became a man who was respected but feared, admired but avoided. His standards were too high. His temper was too short. His honesty was too brutal. The wrestling business didn't want men like him anymore. They wanted corporate employees. They wanted people who played the game. Orndorff refused, and he paid the price. He became lonely. His relationships suffered. His body failed him. The very thing that made him a legend also made his life harder. The emotional cost of his anger was immense. He was right about so much, but being right didn't make him happy. Paul Orndorff's hate list wasn't really about hate, it was about standards. He despised weakness. He hated politics. He couldn't stand laziness. And he refused to accept anything less than complete commitment. Hulk Hogan represented political favoritism. Andre the Giant represented physical limitations being rewarded. Junkyard Dog represented style over substance. Tito Santana represented the painful cost of excellence. And Vader represented disrespect. Each man on this list showed Orndorff something he couldn't accept about wrestling. His toughness made him great, but it also made him impossible to please. Nothing was ever good enough. No one ever worked hard enough. The business never lived up to the standards of the dungeon. Maybe Paul Orndorff didn't hate people at all. Maybe he just hated what wrestling became. A corporate machine that valued marketing over merit. A business that protected stars instead of rewarding work. A world where toughness didn't matter as much as politics. Orndorff was a relic of an older time. A time when legitimacy was everything. And when that world disappeared, so did his place in it. Like this video if you respect Orndorff's brutal honesty. Subscribe for more wrestling history. And comment your thoughts on Mr. Wonderful's legacy. Did he have a point or was he just bitter? Let us know.